Okay, welcome to Prep Week for our perimenopause fat loss cohort. We're really excited to be offering this, and I think that my main focus for this week, but also this cohort, is that we give you guys strategies that feel really doable. This stage of life is very busy, and I know we all have full schedules, a lot on our mental load. Our mental load is high, and we have busy, busy lives, whether that's working or supporting our families. So these strategies for fat loss should be ones that we can integrate into our lives. And obviously, we're all going to look different and have different lives and different life demands, but we want to really give you strategies that are going to help, especially at this stage of life. And so please, please take advantage of the group and us coaches. We have myself, Coach Sam, Coach Marita, and Coach Marissa. And we're really, really excited to answer questions and support you throughout this group. And just know that if you have a question, someone else probably does as well. So don't be nervous about asking any questions that you have. Um, and then also too, if you have any concerns with your intake that we've given you, pretty much everyone, we've had some like late stragglers joining in the last couple of days. I closed signups though, so signups are now closed officially. So everyone should have macros and nutrition intake set. But if you're like not seeing something or you feel like you missed something, then just let us know. So I will just go ahead and get started because we have a lot to cover. And again, if any of this feels overwhelming at all, then don't stress. We have a lot of information for you guys in this cohort, and just take what you feel you need to gain. Don't feel like you need to look through all the resources. As you know, in the prep week email, we put kind of everything we felt would be beneficial for you. So look through those at your leisure. Don't stress. We don't need to look through any of them. They're just there to give you more information if you feel that you want to learn more. So, okay. Welcome to Prep Week. So, hopefully, all of you have gotten your Prep Week email with all of the resources. This is our chance to slow down, reset, and build a strategy that's actually going to serve us long term. Most of you are here because what you've done in the past, or maybe what you're doing, what you've tried to do currently, isn't working for you anymore. And that's okay. Likely you're either in perimenopause or you're postmenopause, or you feel like you're starting to notice some changes in your cycle and also some kind of downward fluctuations in hormones, and you're realizing that maybe you aren't perimenopausal yet, but that's in the near future and you want to be prepared. So our approach is really rooted in, oops, sorry, if you guys ask a question, okay, someone has old macros from a consult from last year. So just go ahead and let us know in the group, because some people, when they signed up with like their PayPal email or some weird email they don't use. And so it would put you in the app as that email. So just double check that. Just send us a message in the group and we'll double check any macros that still need to be done. So we are building strategies that are going to support you now. And some kind of simple actions for this week: pick your 3 to 4 training days and block them off in your calendar. I know for myself, I don't really have the same training time every day because my days are totally different, whether I have meetings or whether I have to take kids places or whether I have, things going on with work. So I don't have the same training time every day. And I'm sure a lot of you are the same, like day to day looks different. So I recommend on Sundays looking at your week and choosing whether that's 3 days that you're going to resistance train or 4 days. If you're new to strength training, I would start with 3. And put those on your calendar, like set them like a meeting and have them be recurring. And so then you can build your week around those if possible, or just adjust them each week as needed. Schedule your grocery shopping and meal prepping. I think this is a really big one. It's so easy for my week to in my day to just like really get away from me. So I try to at least grocery shop twice a week and kind of make a plan for the couple days following. Plan in walking time if you can, or build it into your daily activities. Like, what do you have to do today? Could you walk during a call? Could you park further away at the grocery store? Could you maybe walk during like a child's practice? Maybe you don't have time to have just like dedicated walking time, but can you add little bits of walking throughout your day to get more movement in? And get a water bottle that you love because week one is going to be a really big focus on hydration. And then treat this like a commitment to your future self. We are building strategies and habits that are going to serve us long term. And so this is going to be a commitment to ourselves that maybe we've had a hard time making and keeping in the past. So, talking about first, our metabolism is not broken. In perimenopause, as estrogen and progesterone start to fluctuate, our body becomes more sensitive to stress and underfueling. So, if you've been eating very little and training really hard without results, it's not you. You're not broken. Your body's trying to protect you. And what happens with aggressive and long term dieting is that our thyroid output slows to conserve energy. This is something we see really often on client labs. If they've been chronically dieting, their thyroid hormone is usually suboptimal, and that's going to impact metabolism and make it to where now we need fewer calories to get the same results. Our leptin will drop, so we'll notice that we're getting hungrier and our energy is lower, which then causes our NEAT to go down, our non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So our daily movement subconsciously drops. So we might be eating what we think is in a calorie deficit, but our fidgeting and moving throughout the day is now less. So we're not actually, it's putting us actually more like in maintenance. And then reproductive and stress hormones shift towards survival. So this is called adaptive thermogenesis. Kind of a sciencey term for basically our body's no longer in a calorie deficit because we have adapted because our body wants us to survive. So our body essentially just gets more efficient at doing more with less. And fat loss still requires a calorie deficit. So, over the next 4 weeks, we're going to do things differently. We're going to implement a moderate deficit while fueling enough to preserve muscle, keep hormones stable, and support recovery and energy throughout. So, some kind of practical takeaways for this week and beyond, things that I want you to focus on and prioritize would be not skipping meals. I think this is something that a lot of women, especially middle-aged women, fall prey to, myself included, if I'm not really intentional, is missing meals. It's so easy to like have a chaotic morning, maybe get kids out the door, get out the door to work or to the gym, and just you're not really hungry anyways because you have a lot going on, to skip breakfast and then just caffeinate through the morning, which a lot of us think, okay, this is great. Like I have now a reserve of calories that I didn't eat, so it's gonna be easier to be in a calorie deficit, right? Instead, we hit the second half of the day and we're tired and stress is high and energy is low, and it's really easy to make up that morning calories that we didn't eat and then some. So we end up overeating in the second half of the day and we just overall don't feel well either. So shooting to nourish and get that nutrition in, getting in 3 to 4 meals per day. What that kind of is what's optimal for you there is going to be different from someone else. Like maybe you like to eat more and have smaller meals throughout the day. I personally like 3 really well-rounded high volume meals, especially if I'm in a calorie deficit. I want to see and feel and taste my food and have a big plate. And so that's usually 3 meals per day for me. And then I might have like kind of a snack in there or something that I'm excited about eating that's not a full meal. So eating a balanced meal every 3 to 4 hours, focusing on hitting your protein target, 25 to 40 grams per meal. That might feel like daunting for some of you. Don't worry if it does. We'll give strategies and ideas too. And that's also something we can work up to. And then don't undereat, especially on your training days. And as you do these things, I want you to start watching. Obviously, you're going to be paying attention to the scale. You're going to be looking at measurements. You're going to be taking photos and like looking at progress in many different ways in terms of fat loss. But I really also want you to watch for signs of metabolic healing, warmer hands and feet, better sleep, stronger workouts, more stable mood and energy. We don't need to be in a severe calorie deficit to see fat loss. So if we can really focus on long-term progress and long-term sustainability, we're going to feel a lot better and our body's going to respond a lot better. So, stress and metabolism. In perimenopause, our body becomes more reactive to stress because of the declining progesterone. And because declining progesterone means that cortisol stays elevated for longer. So, our body's reaction to stress is going to be different at this stage. Chronic stress is going to raise our cortisol and also potentially disrupt our thyroid hormone conversion from T4 to T3, which is going to reduce our insulin sensitivity and also disrupts sleep and increase cravings. So, all of these things can kind of pile on top of each other for making it a lot harder to be adherent to a calorie deficit. You can feel like you're doing everything right and still fat loss doesn't feel possible. And so, if stress isn't managed, then it is going to be a lot more challenging to see sustainable fat loss. So that is why we talk a lot at Hungry Fitness about stress management, and we're going to talk about that a lot throughout the cohort because it's very important. And I think kind of number one on the foundation of the pyramid for optimizing stress would be sleep, getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And I have realized even in the past year for myself, um, seven might not be enough. Like you might actually need more than 7 hours of sleep if stress is high and if your workouts are challenging, and then you add a calorie deficit on top of that. You might need to play around with that 7 to 9 hours and see, like, okay, well, actually, do I feel way better if I get 8? Maybe 9 isn't possible, but is there one day a week I could get 9 and like really prioritize that and see how my biofeedback improves? Maybe it's a lot easier to manage a calorie deficit. Maybe my training is more optimal and my recovery is better so that I can still train hard. So then when I'm in a calorie deficit, I am able to keep as much lean tissue as possible, which is also really important. So, sleep, number one, whatever we can do to improve sleep, quantity and quality is going to be really beneficial. And then obviously in perimenopause, sleep can be impacted. So things that are going to help with sleep would be optimizing your circadian rhythm, like getting outside and getting that sunlight in your eyes, even if it's 5, 10 minutes. I try to just like stack that with something else. Maybe I'll do a morning walk. And get sunlight in my eyes so that I'm getting steps and I'm getting light and I feel like I have some momentum to start my day. Also, it really helps me mentally. Or maybe I don't have time for that. I slept in a little bit, then I'll maybe drink my coffee outside or have my breakfast outside. Or even if there's not time for that, open the window on my way to do carpool or head to work. So a few different options from like this is the ultimate to like, okay, what are alternatives I can still do to get that morning sunlight? Because that is going to help with that thyroid production. That's also going to help with cortisol. And also, inverse to cortisol, it's going to help with melatonin. So it's going to help us later in the day if our body knows what time of day it is. And the only way to really know that is to get outside so our body can see, okay, I'm getting morning sunlight, it's morning. In the evening, getting some evening light. That will help your body produce melatonin, which is going to help make you sleepy and get good quality sleep throughout the night. So getting outside is going to be really beneficial. A lot of us work, or maybe we want to wind down and watch TV at night. I don't have any on me, but getting just a $20 pair of blue light blocking glasses if you're going to be on screens at night is going to also be really helpful for getting good quality sleep. So those are some ideas. We'll talk a lot more about those, but sleep is definitely something to consider and prioritize. Um, and then if stress is high throughout the day, like doing what you need to improve that, whether that's holding onto your belly and chest and getting in 5 deep breaths and just a quick body scan. Maybe that's getting out for a walk. Maybe that's journaling and thinking about gratitude. Maybe it's making a to-do list every night before bed so you can kind of brain dump and go to bed with a clear mind. Finding some ways to help manage stress so that you aren't in that state of fight or flight constantly. And then talking about training, like making sure your training is supporting your goals. So we know that we want to maintain lean tissue. We want to Muscle is really important in perimenopause and postmenopause, so we don't want to sacrifice that just because we want to lose body fat. So having those 3 to 4 resistance training sessions in your week, like that is important. And then beyond that, what's going to benefit us in terms of recovery and also how we feel. Let me just check and see if I have some messages. I'm seeing some come in, so I'll keep an eye on those. Yeah, Marissa posted this. Coach Marissa said, in fat loss, I've learned that I have to get 8 to 9 in order to feel my best. Anything less, and it really affects how I feel during the day with my lower calories. I'm the same way. It's like, I feel like every half an hour less sleep I get is like 10% less likelihood I have of adhering to my calorie deficit. So if I'm getting 9 hours, I'm going to be pretty dang adherent to a calorie deficit. I'm like probably above 90% adherent. If I'm getting 8 hours, I'm going to be closer to like 80%. If I'm getting seven, it just goes down from there. And if I think I can get 6 hours and just crush my workout and adhere to a calorie deficit, I'm not in my 20s anymore. So it's really like not possible. I think the mental load and the stress that I have. Sorry guys, my kids keep leaving the door open and I have flies coming in. So if you just see me like just don't worry about it. But I've noticed like I can't handle a calorie deficit and all that life demands of me at almost 38 than I could at 28. It just looks very different. So I think we just need to have different expectations of ourselves. Just like I could train so hard on very little sleep in my 20s and now I know better, right? I'm going to get sick. My body's going to respond in a way that I am not excited about. So, keep that in mind. If you're pushing a calorie deficit like and you're just exhausted, maybe a shorter workout and more sleep is going to benefit you right now in the short term. So, um, and then, okay, before I move on, because I can't help but not answer questions, um, for those of us that work rotating shifts, hospital, any recommendations on sleep, circadian rhythm, or when to eat for night shifts? I know Sam on our team, I don't know if she is like on right now, but she is always a wealth of knowledge when it comes to shift work. She was a nurse and has had a lot of clients that do shift work. Sam, are you on? There's so many.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what I always
Any
did
advice
is
on that?
sleep was definitely not ideal. So I just as much outside time as I could on the days I worked and the days off is kind of just the name of the game. And then I would just keep my eating schedule. Like when I work nights, my breakfast would, after shift, it just looks so different. Like your breakfast is kind of your breakfast is your meal before you go into your 7 p.m. shift. So, eating my breakfast at 5:30 in the morning and then we go to work and then I have my lunch closer to 11 and noon, depending on how busy you are. Snacks in between, and then maybe your dinner close to 4 or 5 in the morning, but kind of before you end your shift, maybe a snack on the way home, and then sleep when you get home. So you kind of almost just like rotate it. So instead of eating at 5 in the morning before your 7 a.m. shift, you kind of just swap it. And I ate, at 5 p.m. or 5:30 p.m. before the night shift. So I kind of just swapped it back and forth. And then the days that I had to swap from, I mean, you're not usually as hungry because you're so tired, but like when you would maybe work until 7:30 in the morning, so you sleep from 9 until the kids get off at school 2:30 3 p.m. Usually, just you have your normal meals that day. I have my dinner at 6:30 a.m. So because I'm sleeping most of that day or try to sleep for 4 to 5 hours that day, I kind of just get back to my regular meals and I'm just having my typical dinner that day. And I personally just try to get right back to my schedule and I like to go to bed early because I tend to not be able to sleep as much on those night shifts with still having to get kids to school and yada yada yada. So I try to kind of catch up on that. So I still go to bed at my regular like 9 10 p.m. time and kind of just jump back into it is what I personally did, found the most helpful. But just keeping meals in between the 12 a.m. to 12 p.m. and not thinking them necessarily as breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but just kind of like a 24-hour schedule.
Yeah, and there's another question about how and when to adjust macros, which Coach Marita answered in the chat, but I'll expound on that a little bit if we have time at the end. But I want to talk a little bit about hormone shifts in perimenopause and what's happening physiologically. So estrogen decline can reduce muscle protein synthesis and increase abdominal fat storage. And I think this is one that's can really get in our heads. I have a lot of women that tell me like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden I'm putting on so much body fat. And really, they aren't necessarily putting on more body fat, but the distribution of body fat is changing. And so they're noticing it a lot more because that midsection is what most of us are paying attention to, right? That's like kind of where our shirts are hitting and our jeans are hitting. It's where a lot of fabric is meeting. And it can be really frustrating to feel like you're doing all the same things. And now all of a sudden you're putting on a lot of midsection fat. And so I think just like knowing that is the reality, our body fat distribution is going to change a little bit in perimenopause and postmenopause. It's going to be more similar to um, like male body fat patterns where you see as stress is high, it's going to be more around the midsection, less lower and upper body. So I think keeping that in mind, you might not be putting on more fat, but that's also it's okay to be frustrated with where the fat is being put on too. And I think just having that knowledge of hormones changing and how that affects us physiologically can be helpful there too. Also, progesterone decline increases our perceived stress and raises cortisol and disrupts sleep. So it just makes us really, really easygoing and happy in this stage. So I think giving yourself grace too in that as well can be not make it necessarily better. I think it's like, those and at the end of our luteal phase, how we can feel a little bit crazy. I think sometimes hormones impact a lot of our mood and our personality. And so just knowing what's going on hormonally is impacting how you feel can help take a little bit of the edge off a little bit and can help you give yourself some grace. So I think this isn't necessarily about like fear here, but just knowing what's happening and working with our hormones. So, and this is also why old strategies from our 20s might not serve us anymore. But that doesn't mean that fat loss isn't possible. So, just talking again about these simple habits that I preach for everyone: strength training regularly, getting protein in with your meals, placing carbs around your workouts to support insulin sensitivity and recovery, keeping alcohol minimal so that you're not impairing sleep even more. These are things that are important always, but in perimenopause, they just become more important or things that we can't like overlook as much anymore. And then why the whole just like eat less, move more doesn't always work, especially at this stage of life. And can sometimes backfire and make things even worse. So lower estrogen means you lose muscle faster. So when you're under eating, if you're not strength training regularly, then that's going to impact your metabolism. And muscle is what really protects our metabolism. And then crash dieting on top of that can cause muscle loss and lower our resting metabolic rate. So we might lose 5 pounds, but if half of that comes from muscle and then we start overeating, then we're going to be in a worse place than we were before. And if you do that multiple times in a row, which can be really common if we're crash dieting and just slashing calorie intake and getting into an extreme deficit, and then we feel depleted and exhausted and tired, and then we overeat on the other side of that, and then that scares us and we go back to the low calories, like we're causing a lot of metabolic stress, and we're also raising our cortisol and potentially disrupting our thyroid and reproductive hormones even more. And that's also going to dysregulate our hunger hormones like ghrelin. Ghrelin will go up, so we'll be more hungry, and leptin will go down, so we won't be as full and we'll be more tired, which can impact our energy and our recovery. And so and so I think in that case, a lot of times we're mentally in a deficit and feeling the stress of a deficit, but we're not reaping the rewards. And so that can be so frustrating and something that we see really often at this stage. I think kind of a desperation of like, I need to make a quick change and then having it not be sustainable. So, what do we do instead? A moderate calorie deficit, and that means like you can do it fast and have it be really hard and kind of have some of these negative adaptations happen, and it's honestly just really hard to adhere to at this stage of life for most of us. Or you can take a moderate approach and be more patient, but know that you're moving the needle in the direction you want to go. And maybe you have 30 pounds you want to lose, but if you lose 10, you're going to feel a lot better. If you lose 5, you're going to feel a lot better. So just taking those small wins and letting that help you build momentum and knowing that slow isn't bad. Slow over time can feel really rewarding and allows for you to enjoy the process more and find a way to integrate these new habits as a lifestyle, which is going to make it a lot more sustainable in the long run to keep that fat off. I would say that's even more important to us as coaches is that you're able to maintain your fat loss than just losing it and gaining it back. That's not really what we're trying to do here at all. So moderate calories, which for most of us is about 200 to 500 calories below maintenance to start. Any kind of a 15% deficit is that sweet spot. I think maybe 10 if you're wanting to look more for recomp and really prioritize muscle building, and maybe up to 20 if you feel like you can handle that. But that is going to be more stressful and that's going to require more energy from you in planning and just being able to adhere to that. So keeping our kind of practical application here, keeping our protein high to protect muscle um, is going to be really important. And then also we want to really signal like holding on to muscle for our body. So not doing at least initially, not pushing a ton of cardio. Initially, with fat loss, I would like to focus on calories. That's going to be the lowest hanging fruit. A lot of us are busy. So, if we can just find ways to lower our intake a little bit by prioritizing more micronutrient dense foods, getting more volume in our meals, making little tweaks or swaps, that it's going to be easier to lower our intake by 300 calories than to add 300 calories of cardio for most of us from a time standpoint and also an energy standpoint. So starting with food and then finding ways like how can you increase your output without adding more stress? So steps would be a really good place to start. How can you just move more throughout the day? Increasing your steps isn't going to add a lot of stress, but it can definitely impact like, okay, now you're burning another 100 to 200 calories a day, which is great. Okay, we had some questions. Looks like they're answering those in the chat. So if you're exhausted and sore and constantly hungry, that's going to lead to burnout. So, we want to fuel our workouts, not train fasted or underfed. Obviously, if you're training like really early in the morning, you're okay to train fasted. I would play around with that and see if you feel better with a little bit of like intra workout carbohydrates, or maybe a little bit of caffeine. But that's kind of one of those. But if you're waiting till 9 a.m. to train, getting some fuel is going to be really beneficial for you, especially in the hours after your workout. And then if you're feeling exhausted, sore, and constantly hungry, doing more is not better. I think that's where we really need to look at recovery and stress. Yep. And then just talking a little bit more on strategy. So we really want the strategy that we implement. We've designed it specifically for you in perimenopause and have worked with many clients through using this strategy and seen a lot of success. So fueling well, getting adequate calories and protein tells your body it's safe. And also, like the alarm bells of stress aren't going off. And so we want to be low enough to elicit fat loss, but not so low that we're also adding a lot more stress on our bodies when hormones are declining. And then also really focusing on building muscle during this stage. It's so important. And I think a lot of us are, at least there's a lot of education on how important resistance training is in perimenopause and postmenopause, and it's still possible to build muscle. So really prioritizing that. If you aren't doing HF physique, that's okay. Our programming is built for progressive overload. It's built for hypertrophy, meaning building muscle. But there are a lot of great programs out there. So as long as you are implementing some resistance training, you're able to track kind of week to week and make sure you're applying progressive overload and you're increasing in weight or reps each week, then that's going to be really beneficial when we're working to lose body fat, so that you're either building muscle, which is possible, harder the further we get into a calorie deficit, or you're preserving your lean tissue, which is what we really want to do. Muscle raises our metabolic rate and improves our insulin sensitivity and offsets estrogen decline. I was just reading, there was a meta-analysis that was done 2 years ago, and they tested over 800 women, and they were resistance training. I think it was 3 to 4 days a week, about 30 to 60 minutes on a progressive overload plan. And hot flashes decreased by 43%. And they also saw across the board increased insulin sensitivity, improved IGF-1 hormone, as well as improved DHEAS, which is going to help a lot with energy, and increased estradiol. There were so many benefits from just resistance training alone. So if you want to like really get your biggest bang for your buck when it comes to feeling your best at this stage, then I recommend prioritizing resistance training. And it doesn't have to be an hour and a half a day, like 30 minutes. My mom does HF Physique 30 minutes twice a week, and she is still putting on muscle in her 60s and so excited about it. And so it's like we have so many women that tell us this. So I want to say it doesn't take a huge amount of volume to see results. And it doesn't have to be at a commercial gym. You can do it at home with dumbbells. So, recovery is very important. As we know, our body is handling stress differently in this stage. So, recover smarter. Sleep regulates our hunger hormones. So, like Marissa said, I also need the upper end of like 8+ hours of sleep if I'm in a calorie deficit, especially if I want my training sessions to continue to go well and I want energy throughout the day. I This is also why adherence to a calorie deficit is better with more sleep, because our hunger hormones are more regulated when we get more sleep. And stress management lowers our cortisol, so our body feels safe, and it is easier to adhere to a calorie deficit. And we also respond better to one. So, similar to what I said earlier on strategy, that 25 to 40 grams of protein per meal, 3 to 4 resistance training sessions a week, 7 to 10,000 daily steps. I think some of us get more than that. That's fantastic. But if you're getting like 15,000 to 20,000 steps a day, it might be too much. It might be too much stress for your body. And I think oftentimes we talk about getting more, but we work with a lot of high achievers. And so sometimes we have women coming in that can't lose body fat and they're getting 25 to 30,000 steps a day. And their body is so stressed out and under recovered and inflamed. And so sometimes we need to back off, and that could be you too. So, consistent bedtime and wake time routines as well for optimizing circadian rhythm. So, this week we're on Tuesday, but I want you guys to focus on some anchor habits. And we all are going to struggle with different things. So, we're going to give you guys habits throughout the cohort, but you don't need to hit all the habits. These are going to be optimal habits for fat loss, and I don't want it to feel overwhelming. So when we load habits next week, if if you're feeling like you can only handle one of those habits, then just choose one of those habits. And we'll talk a little bit more about that too. But this week, practicing some anchor habits, like what do you feel like you need the most? Let's practice those this week. With lower estrogen, your body has to work harder to maintain muscle and insulin sensitivity. So these habits are going to be really beneficial to both. I think anchor habits is kind of a good term because no matter how chaotic our life gets, we can keep coming back to these to keep moving the needle in the direction that we want it to go. So, number one, nutrition. Fat loss is driven by energy balance, right? Calories in versus calories out, but the quality and structure of those calories matters a lot for our health, hormones, muscle retention, and also just how well we can adhere to the calorie deficit. I know if I'm eating 3 meals a day and they're really calorically dense and not a lot of volume, I'm just starving all day. So if I'm not prioritizing volume in my meals and making some food swaps so I can have more volume, then it's really hard for me to adhere to a calorie deficit. That would look like maybe instead of eating pasta, this is one that I commonly do actually. I'll make spaghetti for my family. They love spaghetti. And instead of doing noodles for myself, I love to eat it over squash. That's like a very big volume swap. So I get a lot more food on my plate and I'm a lot more satisfied. And When you eat consistently, don't skip meals, and prioritize protein, then you're going to have more consistent energy throughout the day as well. And you're able to stabilize your blood sugar, which helps with hunger, energy, and cravings. All of these things being very helpful for staying in a calorie deficit. The easier we can make it on ourselves, the more sustainable it's going to be. So, a lot of the strategies we give you guys over the next 4 weeks are going to be how to make things easier on yourself. Can we do it and have it be really hard and just like drink smoothies all day, protein drinks all day? Yeah, I some people might be able to. I can't. I need to eat my meals and get volume in and also not have it be really time consuming either. So, pairing protein with carbs, getting well-rounded meals, getting enough hydration so that we feel energized throughout the day and we're not having cravings, getting fruits and vegetables so that we can get our fiber and micronutrients, and then strength training, implementing progressive overload, focusing on daily movement. But it doesn't need to be a huge overhaul, like walking after meals for a few minutes, parking further away, take walking calls. We're trying to stack small wins and build on that over time. Minimum dose is the goal. Um, and then tracking beyond progress beyond the scale. So during perimenopause, sometimes our periods can be really long and we can retain water leading up to those periods and it can be really persistent. I have a lot of clients in perimenopause right now. And so sometimes the scale doesn't always validate our efforts, and we're going on like day 50, day 60 of our cycle, and that water weight can hold for some time, and then we'll see like a big drop when the cycle finally hits. And so just knowing that those fluctuations can mask fat loss on the scale, that's why Marita said like giving it 3 to 4 weeks and paying attention to your biofeedback to know if you're in a calorie deficit. Are you a little bit hungry in between meals? Are you noticing that maybe the scale's not moving, but you're noticing like clothes are fitting a little bit better? Your cycle, with it being irregular, water retention is really common, and that's why the scale is just one data point. So, how we want you to track your progress would be energy and mood. More stable energy, fewer crashes, more stable hunger, especially if we're eating regularly at regular intervals, and then maintaining or improving your lifts. That's one that's going to be like really great biofeedback. And I think one that we could probably all strive for, especially during these first 4 weeks. As we get further along, we might need to make some changes to our training, especially expectations, because that might start to decline with more fat loss, and we can implement some other strategies to help with recovery there. But body comp trends. So, not just the scale, we're looking at photos, we're looking at measurements, and we're looking at weekly averages. This is one that people can get really wrapped up in when you have like a high fluctuating day or even 2 to 3 days. It's okay. There's so many reasons why the scale can fluctuate. Just give it time. Look at that weekly average, track your daily weight, and see, like, okay, how does my weekly 7 day rolling average compare this week to last week? And then also factoring in ovulation and your cycle. Is that anywhere in there? Have you traveled? Have you eaten out? Is stress higher? Did you switch up your training this week? Did you eat more salt or did you eat higher carb intake before bed? So, all of those things are going to impact the scale. So, that's why we're looking at clothes fitting, photos, measurements, the scale, and then also biofeedback. And this is really about just a smarter approach. In perimenopause, our body and our mind, I think, thrive on structure, rhythm, and recovery. And so prep week is where we are going to build the systems that make that really possible, systems that create success. So prepping your protein. When we do cook dinner, cook enough that you have leftovers for the next couple of days that you can just easy grab and go. Schedule your workouts in your calendar, set reminders to eat before you're starving. If you have meetings all day, then this is me today actually. I had a protein shake because I didn't have time to actually prep anything and I wanted something I could sip during my calls so I wasn't hungry later in the day. So, making a plan and implementing that based on your schedule for the day, packing your gym bag the night before, if you're working out early, and just making those little adjustments that are going to help make these habits more easily integrated into your week. So, kind of this week, choose your training days. grocery shop and prep some basics, set a bedtime alarm. So instead of maybe your morning alarm, like what's your wind down alarm? When can you start that? And that might mean telling kids like, I'm good night. You guys can tuck me in tonight. Because I know that's the case at my house. My kids will never go to bed sometimes. Um, Pick one, so not seven, but pick one stress management habit. Maybe it's an AM walk, maybe it's a gratitude journal, maybe it's breath work, maybe it's just like looking at all the things on your plate and figuring out, can I automate any of these? Can I just eliminate any of these? Are some of these on my calendar and I don't want to do them and I actually would feel a lot better just canceling them? Or can I delegate? Can I hand them off to someone else and let us all contribute? And remembering that momentum builds through repetitions, not extremes. So, for this group, perimenopause is a transition, and your metabolism has probably been protecting you, and now we're going to do things in a moderate way so that it is possible to build and see fat loss over time. Consistency. Like the best way to have consistency is through flexibility. So being able to adapt, make adjustments. If your day doesn't go as planned, it's okay. You can modify and adjust or start over right now. It doesn't have to be Monday. It doesn't have to be tomorrow. Like, what's the next best choice you can make for yourself? Even a B plus day can compound into progress and results over time. So every time you follow through, you build self-trust. And I think most importantly, asking for support. That's where we come in as coaches. And also, having been a part of, having seen the Hungry Fitness community over the last 5 years, and also having done these cohorts for the last year and a half, 2 years, the community is amazing. So share your wins, share your questions, share your struggles. Asking for help is a strategy, and that is what we're here for, is to learn from one another and to improve our own personal strategies. So everyone is here. Everyone is wanting to see fat loss, and we all have busy, demanding lives. So support each other. The energy in the group is going to be really beneficial to all of our success. And I think most importantly, we really don't need to be perfect. We just need to have enough flexibility and be willing to adapt and ask questions if we need improved strategies so that we can keep moving in the direction that we want to go, because we can lose body fat in perimenopause, and we will be with you every step of the way to get there. So, any questions from anyone? I know I saw some questions come up. I'll look on the chat too. I see quite a few little red alerts. So, Sam and Marissa and Marita, do we have any outstanding questions to answer? It looks like you guys were doing a great job. Okay, someone asked, I think there's just one that I'm seeing. Sleep. I can set an alarm, but it
Yeah,
is
just
useless.
plus.
Let me stop screen sharing really quick. Um, but it's useless. I'm guessing I need to get blood work, but in peri, I do almost all of these things, but waking up at 3 a.m. every morning. Progesterone worked for a while and was amazing, but it seemed to stop working. Would you say there are other strategies I should see about or upping my dose of progesterone? This is something I think Marissa is going to talk a little bit more about on next week's call, with like HRT considerations and how that can be beneficial in perimenopause and something to explore. But I think definitely having an appointment with your doctor and testing progesterone and seeing where it's at. And it's not always like, it's going to be individual person to person. So it might be a matter of tweaking dosage and then seeing how you feel. Um, Anything to add there? Also, if you're not taking magnesium glycinate, I think you said you're doing everything, then that is something that's going to help overall nervous system support. And I have seen a lot of clients feel a lot better and get more quality sleep and not have that wake up at night when they are taking magnesium glycinate too. Okay, how do you measure macros when your meals are blended? Sweet potato hash. So you can do a recipe on MyFitnessPal. If you go in to diary and go to add foods, my recipes, you can create a recipe. And so you could put in sweet potato hash. And then for how many servings, just leave that blank and you'll put in all of the ingredients. And I would only put in the ingredients that actually have like significant calories. So like green onions, I'd probably leave out. Dijon mustard, I would leave out. Just put in the food items that actually have more than, 3 calories. Put those in the quantities. And then if you get your mixing bowl that you're going to mix them in, you can put that on your food scale and hit tare. So it's at 0 and put all the ingredients in, mix it up, and then weigh. Well, I guess, Sam, do you usually weigh it before or after? I guess it's gonna change a little bit after you cook it. So I would say cook the best kind of way to do it to be like the most
After I
the
usually do it
most
before I eat
accurate
it.
would be to put your casserole dish on the scale and tare that, put everything in, bake it, and then put it back on. So you'll just write down like how much your casserole dish weighs, and then you can weigh the entire dish. Is everyone following here? So weigh the entire dish after it bakes. If you're baking it, I think with the meal you suggested, sweet potato hash, weigh it after and you'll subtract the casserole dish that it's in, and that will give you your total grams. So let's say it's like 750 grams. Then that would be what you'd put in for servings. You would just put 750. And then save the recipe. And then when you go to portion out your individual serving size, maybe you're taking a big serving today, maybe it's a small one, you can just scoop it out and weigh that serving in grams and then plug in the amount of grams you had, and it will auto tell you what the macros are for that serving size. Um, there an email that explained where to download the HF app and connect to MyFitnessPal. Maybe Sam can message on the app. So yes, we will email if you're coming back to the app, sometimes it doesn't send like a new invite. So if you just put your email address in the chat, we'll make sure to get that sent out to you. And then for connecting to MyFitnessPal, when you log on to the app, it will prompt you on how to connect to MyFitnessPal, but just message us if you have any questions there. For magnesium glycinate, the dosage, the art recommended daily allowance is 500 milligrams. I have a brand that I like because one pill is 500 milligrams. It is I can post the link, but the brand, it's called Deal Supplement. Let me copy the link here because I don't like taking 5 pills a day. So that one is just one pill, is 500 milligrams. So I really like that one.
All right, I sent the link to the app to both these people.
Okay, and then what about HIT? What's the deal in perimenopause? I've heard it's good, heard it's bad. It doesn't necessarily make me feel as good as it used to. Yeah, you're not alone. I think too, as we talked about, as hormones are declining, our body handles stress differently. So what we could handle for high intensity exercise, maybe in our 20s, is a little harder to handle. We notice we need more recovery in our 30s, and then maybe in our 40s, it's even more so, 50s, even more so. So I don't like to give just like a general blanket statement, but if you're noticing that you feel like garbage when you're doing HIIT workouts, then you're probably under recovered and it's probably too much intensity to add on to everything else your life demands. And I don't think it needs to be all or nothing. Well, for some of us, it might. It might need to be all or nothing for a period of time and then trying to reintroduce and seeing how your body responds. Um, is what I would recommend if you're feeling like energy is low, you're waking up in the night, you're tired throughout the day, you're having a hard time getting motivated, you're sore. Anything else you would add to that, ladies? Those are all good indications that it might be too much intensity. HIIT is one of those things. So when you're looking at cardio, high intensity cardio, like being in that zones 3 through 5 is great. And you can burn more calories in a shorter amount of time than you would with like zone 2, right? But zone 2 or zone 1, those are going to be less stressful on your body. They're going to take longer to burn the same amount of calories, but also that might be what your body needs right now. If you're already stressed from work, you're stressed from family, you're stressed from your calorie deficit, maybe you're stressed because you're not getting enough quality sleep. So we can only handle so much stress And if we're already filling that bucket in all the other categories of our life, then adding on high intensity exercise that's going to require more recovery than zone, like getting in more steps or implementing zone two, it might just be too much for us. And so if fat loss is the priority, we know that's going to be stressful on our bodies. So that might mean lessening HIIT right now in this stage and really prioritizing zone, like getting in more steps or maybe some zone two cardio instead. Would you ladies add anything to that?
Nope, I agree. For most women starting to get to our age or older, it tends to be harder to recover specifically in a calorie deficit. So
Yeah.
make sleep more of a priority if you're not willing to get rid of the HIIT and start there. Really make sure you're fueling yourself properly around your training sessions. See if like those habit changes can make you feel any better, recover better from those sessions. And if you're still finding, you're getting injured, you're not progressing, you're really, really, really hungry and it's hard to stick to your calories, things like you mentioned, then maybe consider just dialing back the high intensity during this time and readdressing it maybe when you're not in a calorie deficit and stress is a little bit lower.
Yeah, and I don't think like HIIT isn't necessarily bad to do, but when you're doing high intensity training, you're training like an athlete. So if you're not fueling like an athlete, then that's where you're gonna get some problems and negative adaptations are gonna happen. And so, like Sam said, you can try some kind of alternative strategies of like, okay, we aren't fueling like an athlete during the entirety of the day, but maybe you can the carbohydrates that you are eating, you can put the bulk of those like around that training session and see if that helps with being able to train at that high intensity and recover. Start there. And then also, like, if you have the flexibility to sleep 9 hours at night instead of seven, try those two things and see if that helps. And if you're still noticing that your recovery is poor and you're having a hard time adhering to your calorie deficit, then if you're doing HIIT 3 days a week, cut it down to two or cut it down to one. I am current I'm currently training for a high rocks competition and I'm also in a slight calorie deficit and so I can really relate to this one and I've had to be really careful about my intra-workout timing, my carbohydrate timing because I noticed like I hit I redline pretty quick in my HIIT workouts if I don't get that carbohydrate intake at about like halfway through my session, about 30-45 minutes in, then I bonk. So that's really important to me because I don't have the same reserve, glycogen storage reserve that I would have if I was in maintenance. And I also know I can't handle a lot of it. I have to be very careful and very intentional with my training because I can't handle anything extra right now if I'm trying to lose a few pounds to make running easier. And then I also know I have a window. Like I'm still pretty early in my training that I can handle a calorie deficit right now if I prioritize sleep. But like in another month, that's not going to be the case, and I'm going to need to bring my eating up to match my training volume so that I can support the higher training intensity and training volume. So we aren't invincible, and the older we get, the more important recovery really is. Um, and it is possible to feel good in a calorie deficit, but those are things that we have to factor in for sure. Any other questions? Oh, how long is it?
The last one is just how long.
Yeah, I think Maria answered that. It depends on how aggressive the deficit is and how your body is responding. In general, most people do best keeping fat loss phases between 8 to 16 weeks before taking a maintenance break. And that might be a 1 to 2 week break, that might be a month, that might be several months. It depends on biofeedback, right? And how much weight you have to lose. If you're eating very low calories or noticing big drops in energy, sleep, recovery, mood, or cycle health, that's a sign the deficit has gone on too long. Think of fat loss in phases rather than one long stretch, periods of cutting followed by maintenance to kind of help reset metabolism, thyroid, hormones, mindset for sure on all of this. I will send out the sample meal guide. I'll do that after this call too. Mentioned in the welcome email. Yeah, they should be linked, but if they're not, then I'll get that sent out on the group too. So we are so excited to have you all here, and I hope that you feel supported and like you are given strategies to help you be successful with fat loss and not overwhelmed. So, like I said, take a look at the resources that we've sent. There's so much information, but don't let it feel like overload of information. If you just show up, you hit within 10%. Oh, and that's the one thing I was going to talk about kind of for this week. The goal is hitting within 10% of your protein and calorie goal. And let me pull that up. I think I had that on my slides, but maybe I glossed over there. Hitting within 10% of your calorie and protein goal. So if your goal for your protein intake is 130 grams of protein, then hitting within 10% above or below that. And then same with for your calories. If your calorie goal is 1600, hitting within 10% above or below that. Like just getting within that range. It does not need to be right on the dot every day. Consistency will build over time. And then if you're noticing like, "Ooh, I had a really low protein day," that's okay. Look at your food log and assess like, where could I have made some adjustments here? And so that I can improve tomorrow. This is all about learning. Having the 3 to 4 meals per day, not skipping any meals, getting in 3+ resistance training sessions per week, 20 minutes counts, something over nothing there. Shooting to get in 7 to 10,000 steps a day. But if you're hitting 3,000 right now, like let's shoot to bump up by 1 to 2,000 and not make this all or nothing. So those habits are going to be on your dashboard starting on Sunday. I will load those. Sorry, I'll load those on Sunday for Monday. So they'll start on Monday officially. You'll see those on your calendar, on your dashboard, and you can check those off. But like I said, it's not all or nothing. They're just a really good opportunity for you to see like what you're doing regularly and maybe where you keep kind of not checking the box. Like maybe you're noticing, oh gosh, I haven't checked the box for 3 to 4 meals a day, like at all this week. And I'm noticing my hunger and energy really takes a hit later in the day. Like that's something I can prioritize. Or maybe something like the steps is really easy for you. You can check that off every day. Or maybe all of them feel hard. Then it's like, all right, goal number one is going to be focused on getting those 3 to 4 meals a day with some protein in each of them. And next week's goal will be to build upon that. And then our week one habit is going to be all about hydration. So we are going to really, you'll see an email come out on Sunday with more resources talking about hydration, but get a fun water bottle. I'm personally am a straw girl. I like to have electrolytes in my water. That helps me drink more. The amount of electrolytes kind of depends on my training and how much I'm sweating throughout the week, but finding ways and if you're like an ice drinker or if you like your water at room temperature, figuring out what you like and what will keep you drinking. I fill up my 40-ounce hydro jug 3 times a day, and that works for me, and I feel really good there. And that gets me 120 ounces of water, and it's easy for me to remember like, okay, I'm on bottle number two. I try to always have a full bottle when I'm working out, and then I'll kind of just chip off throughout the day. I carry it with me everywhere I go. So water intake is going to be really big. If we're not hydrated, then we're going to have food cravings. We're going to have low energy. We're going to have poor digestion. So that is a big kind of low hanging fruit for most of us. If you feel like that's really hard for you, then let us know and we'll give you some ideas too. So those will be loaded on your dashboard for Monday, and that's what we'll focus on for week one. And then for week two, we'll build one habit each week. So we're kind of going to maintain those, hitting the 3 to 4 meals per day, getting in 10% of our protein and calorie goal each week, lifting 3 times per week, and getting in our steps. And again, just to reiterate, if that feels like a lot, then start with 1 to 2 things. This week, maybe test out like 1 to 2 of those and see how you feel, and then make a plan for next week. So, if you have any questions, put them on the app today. I think I saw a couple, so I'll be sure to get on and answer those. But we're so excited to have you. Let us know if there's anything that you're worried about before we start week one, and then take the next 5 days or so to make a plan and feel ready. I hope you all have a great day today. Thanks for joining. Talk to you soon.